In this presentation, we examine public policy issues related to gender and women other than that of employment. While there are many public policy issues beyond employment, we will briefly examine only three: voice, violence, and choice. Foundational to democracy is the ability to have a political voice, the ability of women to vote and get elected, to actually get seats at policy tables. The battle for women's suffrage was a long and important historical struggle that can help inform the challenges related to current efforts to expand and protect the rights of women and others. Voting open to women the ability to fully engage in democratic government, but it did not occur until 130 years after the adoption of the Constitution. A key principle of diversity, equity, and inclusion is having diverse parties represented when decisions are made. In public policy, that means women being elected to Congress, to state legislatures, and to local governing bodies. When Kamala Harris became vice president in 2021, she became the first woman to hold that office, succeeding 48 white men who had served the preceding 232 years. She also became the first person of color to hold that office. The number of women in legislative positions has been growing, but remains about 20% lower than their representation in the population. The Violence Against Women Act addresses four areas: domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and dating violence. It was approved by Congress in 1994 and was last reauthorized for funding in 2013. Subsequent efforts at reauthorization have failed. The goals of VAWA are to prevent violent crime, respond to the needs of crime victims, to learn more about crime, and change public attitudes through collaboration. The Office of Violence Against Women administers the majority of the programs with support from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Office of Justice Programs. As noted, despite repeated efforts, there has not been support in Congress to reauthorize and fund the VAWA grant programs since 2013. Human trafficking also remains a source of violence and exploitation of girls and women. As reported by the Department of Homeland Security, every year millions of men, women, and children are trafficked worldwide. They say it can happen in any community, and victims can be of any age, race, gender, or nationality. The traffickers use violence, manipulation, or false promises of well-paying jobs or romantic relationships to lure victims into trafficking situations. Language barriers, fear of their traffickers, and or fear of law enforcement frequently keep victims from seeking help and making human trafficking a hidden crime. Traffickers force people into labor or commercial sexual exploitation, and they look for people who are susceptible for a variety of reasons, including psychological or emotional vulnerability and economic hardship. The trauma caused by the traffickers can be so great that many may not identify themselves as victims or ask for help, even in highly public settings. The public policy debate that rivals reproductive rights, if any, is the debate over gun rights. Since 1973, Roe v. Wade, women have generally had access to abortions in the U.S., although efforts to undermine that access began immediately and have been continuous. With recent changes in the Supreme Court, legislatures in various states, notably Texas and Mississippi, have intentionally passed anti-abortion legislation that would become test cases in a new round of Supreme Court reviews. It is widely expected that the court will significantly erode the rights created by Roe, likely in 2022. Will Congress intervene with federal law? Not likely. Reproductive rights will continue to devolve to the states with dramatically different approaches and varying degrees of access impacting women who have the least resources. Roe established a basic right across all states. It is one thing if the court removes that right. However, could the court establish a new standard that not only enables the restrictions approved by the state legislatures to continue, but would impose new restrictions on states who have not changed their laws and that have strong pro-choice policies? As we have seen over the years, appointments to the Supreme Court heavily impact public policy, and a precedent is never an absolute precedent. An unanswered question is this: does the U.S. need an equal rights amendment to the Constitution protecting women? Background on the amendment is provided in the module along with opposing perspectives. There are far more policy issues related to women than the ones we've talked about in this module. What do you see as the most pressing policy issues for women in your community and in your state? Would the ERA make a positive difference on the issues that we've talked about and those that we have not? What do you think? In this module, we have only explored a few of the public management and public policy issues related to women. The social construction of gender and gender roles have changed over time, leading to the right to vote and the ability to run for office and get elected. A wider range of jobs are open to women, but implicit biases can interfere with recruitment and promotions. Male-oriented organizational cultures can undermine inclusion and belonging. Historical practices in pay, promotion, and benefits can be barriers to equity. The doors that have opened for women and those that remain closed are based on the evolving social constructs and how those changes are addressed by policy or not addressed. Google the most powerful women in the world and read their awesome biographies and look at the racial composition. Google the most powerful black women and read about their awesome biographies and how they've achieved their sources of power. Next, Google the most powerful people in the world. Observe the visible differences.